a good John Malkovich in that Deepwater Horizon
Yes,
film.
but doing a dodgy accent. He's meant to be doing Cajun or something. He kind of
Keep
goes
digging for
all
the...
around. The oil is not coming
And
up
I want it dug.
for the thing.
I don't know if that's what he says.
But I want it dug.
I want you to keep
Drilled.
digging. I got asked this question the other day, and I thought I'd bring it to you. A little hypothetical for you, right?
Please, yeah.
If you could Thanos snap one of these actors out of existence,
oh my God.
right? But you have to choose which one's films from the future you'd like to watch. Hanks, Cruise. So one of these actors is going to completely stop making films forever. Which one would you rather see? Whose films?
Their past films remain. By snapping them,
no more films. Retire.
Films.
Retire.
So that's a nice way.
Yeah, retire.
Instead of turning them to dust.
Turn to dust, yeah.
Who do I put on a permanent?
So all their old films still there for you to enjoy.
But I don't want to see. I don't want to see any more new films.
You can end either Hanks or Cruise's career
Just those two.
right now. Whose career for the next? Let's be honest. 20 years if they're lucky? Cruise will be going. Cruise will be going till he's old.
It's a very good question.
Whose career do you like the look of more at this very? So let's be honest, like Twilight stage of their career.
No,
not Twilight. It's not Michael Caine.
Tom Hanks is probably 63 or something.
They're both in their 60s.
Tom Hanks is 61. Tom Cruise
is
is
freshly 60.
And Tom Hanks is probably, I want to say 60, maybe 65.
The two Toms.
The two Toms. Yeah. I would say it's a very good question. Because I probably... Here's the thing. Last week,
it's hard, isn't
it was
it?
announced...
Very different careers.
So last week it was announced that Tom Cruise's next film will be the lead role in Alejandro Iñárritu's new film, and I'm like, aha, that's what I like. Because not only are you Tom Cruise is at the top of his game at the moment with the Tom Cruise films, the Top Gun Mavericks, the Mission Impossible.
He's a proof of concept to his own formula.
But I like the Tom Cruise that does the interesting art films, that does the
Me too.
Magnolias, that does
Me
the
too.
Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
I miss that Tom Cruise that does the Eyes Wide Shut. So
Few good men.
Thank you very much. So if Tom Cruise is open to doing that kind of stuff, if we can get some more of those out of there, I'd probably see that more. Now, no disrespect to Mr. Hanks.
No, we'll get to him.
Who has had a very good filmography, very good back catalogue. Probably more of a safer, easier to sit on back catalogue than probably Tom Cruise has had. But I think
More
that
varied,
recently,
I think.
Tom Hanks has put through a couple of sleepers recently. A couple of...
The film The Post really came and went. Do you not think?
No, I think that film got a huge amount of praise.
No one talks about it. No one's seen it.
Who are you talking about? It got loads of buzz in the Oscars.
No, I don't know one who talks about it
If
now.
you'd said to me the one where he's got the robot dog, no one talks about it now. That's different. We're 6 years after. When it came out, it was big news. Because Spielberg made 2 films in 1 year, and it was very big. It was actually big news because it came out the same time that Trump was inaugurated, and it was all about post-truth, holding truth to power, making people accountable. And I remember
What else did he put out that year?
Ready Player One.
Oh wow, he did those in the same
within 12 months.
Within 12 months,
yeah, it was tight. So I would say, just on that point, I would counter that. But to answer your question, I would say Tom Cruise, I would let him continue, and Hanks, go retire.
I'm very happy with Tom Cruise's addition to the action genre of cinema and what he's done.
Yeah.
And Mission Impossible, not abandoning it, seeing it through. We've not seen Dead Reckoning Part 2 yet, but I'm sure it'll be great. I'm ready for him to go, thank you, action. He's slowing down. He can't run that fast forever.
We don't want a Tom Cruise film where he's like the Indiana Jones,
where he's trying to do the arms high run, but it just doesn't work, and they have to camel him through the movie like Harrison Ford.
They have to hire an actor to play his legs.
Yeah, literally, that'll happen.
I think
because you could do this with any actor. You could actually, it'd be more, maybe less interesting to do it with younger actors. Like you could do Chalamet, Mescal. You could go but at the moment their careers are so open. They can do 100 different things. Technically, yeah. I feel like they both do, at least so far, they're both doing interesting, varied work with great directors. You could take either.
Yes. I think Mescal came later. He needs a bit more variety. But he's going to get it with Gladiator. I think he's looking forward to Gladiators being like, I do other things apart from be sad and cry. Which he does very well.
I bet he'll be sad and cry. I'll make a bet with you.
With corn in his fingers.
Yeah, with corn, dust under his nails, and blood hanging over sand in his hands.
Sade. Enya sings that song.
Yeah.
It was a good one. Yeah. So, talking about movies, and I find this story funny because it's about how overly invested we get in terms of movies and movie logic.
Yeah.
This story contains a swear word in advance if you're driving the car with children, so cut forward.
Do you think that happens a lot?
What?
Oh, by the way, I picture a lot of our listeners driving in my mind's eye. Do you?
I don't.
Do you like picture a default listener? Because to me, it's
ready
like on
listener
the
one.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't actually.
You don't have like an idea of our
I
listener.
think that would
put
I just think they're just kind of around, just doing stuff, just in a good way.
The reality is, you do different things when you listen.
Anyway,
sorry.
No, it's fine. My friends just started seeing someone, and they were watching a horror film together. Watching Barbarian. Actually, I watched Barbarian. Because this guy's into horror, and they both absolutely loved it again. And
Barbarian's great.
And which is fantastic. And this isn't a spoiler for Barbarian, but this guy said to my friend, they're talking about it afterwards. He's like, "That was great," and wow, like that's so brave of her as well, because like she was able to get out at one point, and like she could have run free, but like she decided to go back. And like, wow, that's so brave. I just don't think I could have done that. And my friend was like, well, yeah, you see, if she hadn't have gone back, there'd be no fucking movie. So it's like I hate
so
to break it to you.
The writers to write
like
that.
it's not a documentary. Like if that didn't happen, it would have been cut. That would have been a 30-minute movie.
And Neo took the blue pill.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I just thought it was really funny. It's like, yeah, of course, he's wrapped up in it.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode. Sorry, were you about to say anything?
It's the same thing you were saying.
Welcome to episode 117, the big one this year. This big one this week. Big film release, probably the biggest film release of 2024, which is interesting because we weren't meant to have it this year.
No.
Dune Part 2 originally coming out in October 2023, pushed because of the strikes.
Delayed for strikes. With all those actors, you're not going to not. The press tour that these guys have been on, Mexico, somewhere else. Continent, here, there, outfit, it's 3PO with nipples on the dance floor.
No, with no nipples.
Actually, yes, that's right. You're looking for them, though.
You shouldn't have been looking, James.
Well, I think Zendaya wants you to be looking for them, but there's nothing to see. There's nothing to see.
Because it's tasteful. It was a tasteful London premiere.
Every time I scrolled on like a video of, them lot at the premiere with the sand, just gave me all the anxiety.
Too much sand.
Sand, really? First of all, you get this... Ordering sand, delivering sand is so heavy, really hard. Yeah. It's going to get everywhere. Yeah. There's no cleaning it up properly.
No.
You never 100% clean that up.
Unless you hose it. You could really hose it, but then you get your
in the air. That's it. That is it.
Literally, it's coarse, it's dirty, it gets everywhere. As Anakin said.
I think Zendaya and Chalamet are going to be tipping out their Prada boots at the end of the day, and sand will just be pouring out.
And the funny thing is, if Zendaya got any sand in that suit, how do you get that out?
Game over.
Walking around like a walking sand timer.
Yeah.
If you just turn her upside down. How long's the movie? We'll turn her upside down and see how long we have to last.
Brolin just grabs her by the ankles.
There we go. She's filling on the bar. Anyway, sorry, this is episode 117, Dune Part 2.
Here's how this is going to go. As people who listen to our show know, this episode will be spoiler-free. We're going to give our pure thoughts. By the time this comes out, the film actually won't be out yet in the UK, but we'll be giving our thoughts nonetheless. Then, later on in the week, I think on Friday, we're going to put our spoiler review of Dune Part 2. So if you've seen the film and you want to hear some more plot detailed specifics, please go to that. But either way, this is going to be spoiler-free. So if you haven't seen the film, do not worry. This is good for you.
So James and I went to see it last week at a preview screening at the Leicester Square IMAX.
Big screening.
And it goes without saying, you have to see this film on the biggest screen possible. But what we're going to do is we're going to begin... Because it's been 2.5 years since the first one, with a little discussion, a brief recap about Dune Part 1, a little précis and what happened in that. So to refresh your memories before we go into Dune Part 2.
Can I just say before you go into it that watching Part 2 and Part 1 as well, but just coming out of Part 2, it really reminded me how the DNA of Game of Thrones is so clearly coming from Dune. Like in the literal language of house, insert family, House Atreides, House Harkonnen, and then like the plot, like the idea of an insurrection of a family's house to the throne and people plotting and the politics and... It was like, oh my God, of course this is Game of Thrones, but it's sci-fi Game of Thrones.
I also think it's important when people watch Dune to remember that it was published, it predates Star Wars.
1965, I think.
Predates Star Wars, I think just about predates Star Trek, or if not concurrent with Star Trek. And predates
sci-fi, really.
Predates 2001 as well. It's absolutely seminal. It is the is the highest selling science fiction novel of all time.
Yeah.
The first one, Dune, by Frank Herbert. So it's a lot to get into, but I do absolutely see the whole myth building.
And separately, George is going to go into part one. But if you want to hear our raw thoughts from Dune Part One, please go back to 2021. Scroll on the old. The old channel.
I just had a little look
back.
at it. The titling and the way we did the show
So
in episode
different.
6 is very, very different.
A side hobby of
It's
ours.
almost like a nice time capsule. We've always said to each other, if we're not looking back at our early content and cringing, then we're not growing.
Yeah.
And we have grown.
Please enjoy the cringe of our earlier episodes.
Yeah, have a little flashback now to a little moment from 2021, a little recap of what we were talking about with the first Dune, and then we'll talk about it right here. So over to 2021, George and James.
So I'm going to hand over now to George and James in 2 years, 3 years' time. So over to you guys. Yeah. Let us know what you think.
What do you think we look like? Jesus Christ.
We look like Stellan Skarsgård. If we keep eating the way we do now, we're going to look like Stellan Skarsgård in June.
And thank you, George and James in 2021. We're George and James in 2023.
Good to hear from you guys. Keep going. Keep posting.
How much younger you look.
You're going to get an audience in like 4 months, I swear.
Have faith.
Yeah.
George didn't even live in London at that point.
No, yes.
Do you remember?
Oh my
I was having to go
God.
back to old Ding.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Just post that clip of the Louis Theroux impression and you'll get like
it'll
3 people
happen.
listening.
So let's do a little recap on Dune Part 1, do we? So I think it's worth saying that James and I saw that in the cinema then, and then I rewatched Dune Part 1 the day before we went to see Part 2 last week, and I've also rewatched it again this weekend because my girlfriend and my mum really wanted to see it, and I think my thoughts at the time were a little bit reserved. I think I was kind of blown away, a little bit fumbled and mumbled, but I overall got a much better experience out of it. So just to recap, what happened in Dune Part 1? Well, you have 8,000 years in the future. It is the time of the Imperium, an empire overseen by the Emperor, a character we do not meet in Part 1, but a character we do meet in Part 2, played by Christopher Walken. You have the planet of Arrakis, a hot desert planet, which is the natives of this planet are called the Fremen, the people who live in the desert in still suits that recycle water, and they've adapted to living in the desert, and it is their land. And the reason everyone loves Arrakis and wants to go to Arrakis is because of spice. Spice, which is termed in Part 1 as the most valuable resource in the universe. It's sort of this kind of amber-coloured dust that is in with the particles of sand. So if you sift it through, it kind of glows in the sunshine. And the reason they want spice is that it powers the interstellar travel of spaceships. They realise without that, interstellar travel would not be possible. It also is this like hallucinogen, this life-giving
Cool
property.
to smoke it.
Yeah, it's cool to smoke it, and it gives the Fremen their characteristic blue eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. We begin Dune with House Atreides, overseen by Oscar Isaac, his son, played by Timothy Chalamet, Paul Atreides, not his wife, but his concubine, his partner, Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson. House Atreides is being asked to be the steward of Arrakis. Arrakis was formerly under the control of the Harkonnens, who all wear black, are all shaved heads, and all have chronic alopecia by the look of it. Yep. They are overseen by the Baron, and their leaders include Raban, played by Dave Bautista. And they controlled Arrakis for almost 100 years, and it became immeasurably wealthy as a result. And so they're saying in the film is that the Emperor saw how wealthy they were getting and thought, I don't like that. I think it's time for the Atreides to go in. But meanwhile, the Harkonnens go, no, I think the Emperor's put the Atreides in because he's setting them up to fail because he also doesn't like the Atreides.
And also the Harkonnens and the Atreides have been at war with each other for centuries.
They do not like
years,
each other.
No.
So the Atreides arrive on Arrakis. They are stewards of Arrakis, but it's very, very tense because they feel like they're walking into a trap because the equipment doesn't work. They need to get spice production back up, and they're aware of the kind of political movements around them. Meanwhile, Paul is having visions, these dreams of Arrakis, a planet he's never been to, of this woman, this girl walking through the desert towards him with blue eyes. He sees just conversations with members of the Fremen, people he's never met. He sees visions of Duncan Idaho, his friend, like slain in battle. He's kind of tormented by it. His mother, Lady Jessica, is a member of the Bene Gesserit, which are a religious order who have been around for thousands of years and steer power from the shadows. They are power brokers, and they support all the great houses, but they are basically have their own designs as well. At the beginning of the film, there's a test where Paul is puts his hand in the box. Charlotte Rampling puts the needle to this thing, and basically it's revealed that there is a great prophecy about the one from the outer world. For thousands of years, the Bene Gesserit have been crossing bloodlines and strategically marrying people to bring forth someone who has a powerful mind, a mind strong enough to bridge space and time, and will unleash a power hitherto
his
unknown.
name is Paul.
Well, they think his name's Paul. You know, and what Paul is one of the prospects they think will be him. They think he's either this character, this Kwisatz Haderach is either about to arrive or he's already here. And it's clear people think it's Paul. And Lady Jessica's like, I think it could be my son as well. And Paul's like, hey, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if I want that. And they go to Arrakis, and the people of Arrakis see him, and they call him the Lasan al-Gahib, which is their term for this prophecy. And he says, this is all propaganda. This is all Bene Gesserit propaganda. And she says, no, you're the chosen one. Anyway, things kick off. The Harkonnens attack. They wipe out the Atreides, except for Paul and his mum. Paul and his mum manage to escape into the desert, hide with the Fremen at the end of the film. And at the end of the film, very crucially, you get a knife fight between Paul and one of the Fremen called Jamis, which is interesting because the whole time Paul has been dreaming of Jamis and dreaming of a friendship they had, and yet their encounter ends in a knife fight in which Paul kills Jamis. And it tells him two things. It tells him that not only do his dreams come true, because he's also met Chani, played by Zendaya, so he's like, oh, here's the girl I've been seeing. But it also tells him that not all of his dreams can come true, that his prescience is not necessarily predetermined.
Sometimes you just tripping.
Sometimes you just be tripping on that spice. But he does actually have an influence on his own future. It's not a predetermined. And the film ends with them going off with the Fremen to learn the ways of the desert, to harness desert power, and to hopefully eventually seek revenge. That is, in essence, what happens in Dune Part 1. And it's worth saying in Dune Part 2, it carries on from the moment straight afterwards. Now, we'll get to our thoughts on Dune Part 2 in a little bit, but that's essentially Dune Part 1. And I just want to say, I don't know whatever mixed mumble-jumbled thoughts I had in 2021, but I can definitely say that on rewatching it, got so much more out of it, and I really, really rate it now, the first film. I really do see it.
Because you've now seen it right before part 2 and
now
after part 2.
Now,
and I must say, from that introduction to Dune Part 1, you've definitely just seen it twice in a week. Jesus Christ, that was really... great resource. Thank you very much.
If I can't do that after seeing it twice, then I'm that kid in the seminar who's like, please. But I want to say something. I've talked about on this show several times about how I will often rewatch a big film with subtitles on.
Yeah,
I talked about it with Oppenheimer, and it was immeasurably invaluable. And I did that when I watched Dune Part 1. And I think I really recommend, not only should you absolutely rewatch Part 1 before you see Part 2, I personally recommend watching it with subtitles if you are an outsider to this world, if you're not brushed up on the books or whatever, because there are details and information that is given that is not necessarily obscured or hidden in the original viewing without the subtitles, but it's more like in Part 1, there's a scene where Paul first gets in contact with the spice. It's just before we first see the...
Great scene.
Yeah, just before we first see the sandworm, and he has this hallucinogen, and you have these whispering voices all around him. Now, when we first saw that in the IMAX, great scene, amazing, but even if you watch it in the IMAX or on Netflix, you can't actually hear what they're saying. But if you watch it with subtitles, they're saying, Kwisatz Haderach has arrived, you are basically the Kwisatz Haderach, it's time to ride. And I'm
totally
going, I know what that is now, because that's the thing Charlotte Rampling said earlier, and it just gives you so much more detail and actually makes you appreciate the real depth of Frank Herbert's writing. Yeah, and there are quotes in the first Dune that I had to write down. I thought that was really, really good, and I'm so glad I did that. But I also was able to appreciate the visual storytelling as well. Yeah, but it's not watching a film with subtitles is not there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like cycling with stabilizers.
Very different experience.
I think people need to remember that outside of the English-speaking world, like most of the world watches films with subtitles in. There are parts of the world that watch films with subtitles with 2 different languages on the screen. And, it's actually something they recommend at film school to watch a film with subtitles in, so you see the beats of the story and everything.
Not like lots of foreign language films, you might watch 50% of it in subtitles. That's never taken away from my experience. Like Anatomy of a Fool, 50% of that film is not in English language. I'm not like missing out on any cinematic quality of it at all.
Watching a film with subtitles can only enhance your experience.
Yeah, I do it a lot.
The only exception is if it's like a wall-to-wall laugh-out-loud comedy and you don't want to see the jokes coming.
You don't want to like rewatch Peep Show with subtitles.
No.
Because you want to re-experience it for the first time and get the jokes that you weren't ready for.
But the reason I was able to explain, like I just did, when I said about the Lasan al-Gahib.
You read it.
Well, I basically have read it. So when they arrive in Arrakis and they're all shouting Lasan al-Gahib, I was able to see that word. Because outside of subtitles, that word is abstract. I've got no grounding for that. So when we see Part 2 and they start talking about the Lasan al-Gahib, I'm like, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I really rated part one. You also saw it, rewatched it recently. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would have rewatched it within 5 months ago, but on a plane, so like pinch of salt. But I did watch it and get another sense for it, and I feel the same. I think it's a beautiful film that's so well realized. My main takeaway is that film's taken so much of the exposition heavy lifting. You're reminded by how much heavy lifting it has to do, and my impression was, I hope part two can just run with it.
Yeah.
That's what I thought about it.
I also think you and I have spoken about how once part two comes out, it makes part one make much more sense. And also
totally.
And it is, and it's worth saying now that really this is one film split into two, or a mini series, really. Anyway, that was part one. That was a little recap. I hope we're all
fresh.
We've spiced our appetites there.
Yes.
Ready for part two. So should we get into it, James?
Part two, coming into it. We pick up, as you said, straight off the end of part one. Paul Atreides is in the desert with the Fremen. He is getting to know Zendaya. He opens the film actually continuing to have dreams in the night of things that are yet to happen. He very much has this sort of culture clash with those in the Fremen. You've got Javier Bardem's character, who is almost this like Bedouin Russell Brand, who's sort of this conspiracy theorist, not in that way, conspiracy theorist, so sure that Paul Atreides is the second coming. He is the Nissan Al-Gaib, much to the dismay to many of the other Fremen who do not trust an outsider, who do not believe that he is the one to lead them. Meanwhile, in the capital city of Arrakis, which is Arrakeen,
that's right.
The Harkonnens are now ruling with a ferocious violence and impatience. They are desperate to start successfully mining spice in the desert, but the Fremen are much more in control of that area and are taking down the Harkonnen units as they go. Other things you need to say are that we've got the development of the Baron Harkonnen's nephew, played by Austin Butler, who is this maniacal, violent, age similar to Paul Atreides. Fade Rother, who is basically this undercurrent, this violent undercurrent between Dave Bautista's character and Stellan Skarsgård's character, and you have this separate dynamic happening with Florence Pugh and Christopher Walken, which I think if you watch the film, you can sort of discover that for yourself and find that out. The rest really is really to be discovered. I don't really sort of talk more about that, other than you've got the Harkonnens ruling in Arrakeen. Paul Atreides is with the Fremen, trying to work his way back to retake Arrakis for himself. That is the plot of Dune Part 2. George, we waited 2 years for it. Yeah. It was big, epic. We saw it in a fantastic screening. There were multiple times in that screening I thought, are we in 4D? Because the rumble and vibration of my chair was going. Yeah. Whether it was an engine, a sandworm, a crowd, just rumble. My chest was vibrating like a boombox.
And it was in a huge, like probably 700-seater screening that has 700. Would you say is that accurate? Probably.
Who knows?
But it was every seat was taken.
Oh yes, you get
every
these.
seat was full. And what's great, about press screenings is that everyone has to turn their phone off and put it away, otherwise they get thrown out.
Fantastic.
So everyone is focused. Everyone is switched.
Also, like we get invited to. We've been to a few press screenings now in that screen. And there's usually like a decent demand, like we did Napoleon there and The Flash, which didn't have much demand. But this was the first time. You were running a bit late. I was like, George, like demand is high, queue is long. They said there's 2 screens, and when there's an overspill of the IMAX one, they're going to fill out the other one. People were manically trying to get seats.
The queue was snaking out around Leicester Square. It was quite tense.
Yeah, very tense. But we made it. We saw it. We got there. George, Dune Part 2, coming out of that film, how did you get on with it?
Genuinely, I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really, genuinely blew me away. And it's quite funny because I think it was in last week's episode how I talked about like when I first see a film, I'm always reserving a little bit for the next time. I never give a film like 5 stars on Letterboxd on the first viewing, that kind of thing. But we stumbled out of that, and you were starting to talk to me, and I had to say, I'm sorry, James. I actually can't quite talk to you right now because I'm genuinely blown away, which I don't really have. I love that feeling. I think it's like magnificent, and I was almost speechless, and I think it's a fantastic achievement of great vision, and it walks this line of balancing depth. It delivers depth and detail, but in a way that's enough to entice you and enthrall you, but never enough to alienate you. It's never enough to push you away, and it's really chocked. It's really chock full of detail. You mentioned the dramatic dynamics there between like the Harkonnens and the Fremen. And I think that is one of the key ingredients that makes this work, because for all its spectacle, underneath it, you have so many knotty dramatic dynamics between the many different characters. And I've just written down a few. There's tension between Paul and his mother, Paul and Chani and Stilgar, the two wings of the Fremen. There's Raban and the Baron. There's Raban and Feyd-Rautha. There's Feyd-Rautha and the Baron. Yeah. There's the Baron and the Reverend Mother. There's the Reverend Mother and the Emperor. There's all these balancing tensions throughout.
Very well realised.
Absolutely just keeps you hooked in, which I think is great. I thought about this when I saw part one again, but when I saw this on the big screen, just the breathtaking design and vision. There is the visual storytelling that he is doing. I know I said I watched it with subtitles, the first one. If I watched both of these films on mute, you would also be able to get an indication of the story. And particularly the visuals that he chooses, Villeneuve, is that they are so textured, the textural palette of it. Yeah. You know, the coarseness of the sand, the smoothness of the metal, the chunkiness of the armor. That genuinely, I felt like if I leant forward and licked the screen, I'd feel it on my tongue. And he uses very, very this particular visceral palette to provoke quite an interesting primal response in the way you regard things. So, like with Feyd-Rautha, that when we first introduced him, I am quite sickened by his presence because it's shot in infrared in this black and white, basically S&M dungeon with lots of black leather. Also, this film, I believe, is a PG. Quite a few bits of throat cutting in this.
Lots of throat cutting. And sort of slightly gendered throat cutting as well.
A little bit Blade Runner 2049 in that respect, which also had a little bit of, subservient woman...
disposable of immediate violence.
Not a great track record there for Villeneuve. But anyway, that sort of element contrasted with the floaty, perfumed, sorry, that sounds insulting, I mean it in a fantastic way, of Paul and Chani in the desert. And you're just getting this like really sort of like primal visual material. And there was times when I actually reminded me of when I first saw like Interstellar in the IMAX, and I just thought, I am just surrendering myself to the majesty of this science fiction. I think it is terrific. I think the performances are all great as well, but basically, I think it's big, bold, bombastic filmmaking that is also meticulously designed and very, very precise in its decisions. And I applaud Denis Villeneuve for what he did. I think bravo. I thought I was really, really astounded. I gave it 5 stars straight away.
It's interesting when we just reference like the things that this novel predated and what it represents as a science fiction story and how many things have come after it, right? Because when my sister asked me what's good and I said, just saw Dune Part 2, it's great. And it's not her film at all. But when she asked me to explain a little bit about it, her brain immediately switched off, which is totally fine. But basically what this film... To look at it, if this was made by a lesser filmmaker, you could look at this film and you could go by numbers, hero's journey, very staple characters, dynamics you've seen before in other IP, aka Star Wars, aka Game of Thrones. Like the list could go on. But there was a moment I was immediately loving it. There was a specific moment, and it's the Austin Butler sequence that happens in the middle of the film. I want to say it's a 20-minute sequence that introduces who this character is, shows you what he's capable of, and it's all shot in black and white. And the design of it, the spectacle, and the way in which it completely takes your breath away was so well done that it would be so wrong to say this is just style over substance. Greg Fraser, as a cinematographer, one of the most exciting cinematographers working right now, coming off the Batman and doing this, and I think like being the chief consultant on the creator, like just incredible. Him and Denis Villeneuve have this wonderful trick of capturing scale of the shot never quite being able to fully show the entirety of its environment. So even though it shows you enormous scale, you're always filling in the rest with your imagination, and what you're already seeing is just breathtaking. You're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. And I thought that Austin Butler sequence was so well done. I'm like, this is how you tell a story that's very familiar to audiences, but told with such amazing artistry and afterthought that with every single frame, as you said, there's so much to take out of it. Kind of like how I saw Blade Runner 2049. I was expecting a Force Awakens style follow-up to the Blade Runner, but actually I thought Blade Runner 2049 was totally competent in its own right and stood alone as its own piece of science fiction. I think it's brilliant performance. Everyone is going for it. I particularly think Rebecca Ferguson was wonderfully really good, slippery and complex and not generic. No. You could so easily have a female character that fall into very generic territory. Florence Pugh, similarly, every scene, I'm listening to every single word.
I think brilliant. What you said, that's actually the heart of it. with Rebecca Ferguson's performance is like, in lesser hands, the whole thing could look very generic. A Christ-like figure, a prophecy of a second coming.
Yeah, like you've seen that before.
We have seen it before, but the detail and the complexity of every single... That's what I said about the meticulous design of everything.
Has
been so well thought out and well thought through, from the dramatic dynamics between people to the performances. I thought Austin Butler's performance was great.
Oh, he's so good.
Really good.
You can eye roll at Austin Butler going all in on a really intense character, but he's brilliant. So good. He totally earns the intensity that his character has.
Yeah.
That 20-minute sequence I thought was breathtaking. And all the sort of like, fascistic marching in line, like through the thing. Architecture in Denis Villeneuve films is just always, you can totally see any of those things go straight into Blade Runner, which is totally like, or even Arrival.
Yes,
like, the design of the ship, all of it is immaculate and lovely, like sort of that spiraled rule of thirds. So good.
And as with part one, there are moments that are really fearsome, and you really kind of feel quite threatened. That's the thing for a film that ostensibly is a PG. I think the last half an hour, I was just like, I was completely blown away. It was really staggering, and it really. There are a lot of dramatic turns, but I was with it. I was following it, and it gets this conclusion. I was like, "Wow, the stakes are high.
Yeah,
this is really important." And the way you're visually showing it is amazing. And
it's pure like cinematic experience at the highest levels. Like this is
really is.
And it, like we usually equate that with like junk food films, comic books. But it's like this is not, or like you'd say Nolan's doing the same thing. But like this is totally earning its right to be the biggest story in TV. Because someone said to me the other day, like, "Oh, do you think they should have done a TV show? I want more." And I'm like, yes, it can make a fucking good TV show, but look how good that cinematic experience was and what you got out of it.
And that's why I say bravo, because with Denis Villeneuve, he took a gamble. He made the first one as part one. He could have put it all into one film, but he took a gamble and said they hadn't commissioned a sequel. No. He just said, "I'm going to take a gamble. I'm going to make half the movie." Half the book.
I kind of understand that though,
because absolutely,
it's complex, and people might not take to it.
And now we're getting the second half of the book, and it is worth saying that this part one and part two is the first book of six, but it is the first book of Dune, and like that. The gamble to do that is it completely pays off. And you're right, it could have made a television series. And if you break it down in hours, this works out about sort of 6-7 hours worth of TV if you were to do it as a miniseries, right? If you were to chop it, what we have, these two films into
it'll be like 5.5.
5.5. Well, this is
2.5 hour films.
This is about 2 hours 45. So nearly 6. I didn't.
It's 5.
I did get an A at GCSE maths, but
there's a long time.
It didn't go any further. Anyway, but I'm glad that they didn't, because for the very reason that the delight we get is so much better, because we get a true cinematic experience. I just say real cinematic experience.
I'd say one of the only things there's a couple of things I maybe would take away from it, but I could have done with way more Harkonnen. All the politics of them hanging out in Arrakeen and power slipping from one person to the other. I thought they completely stole the show every time they were on screen. I actually could have done with less Fremenning, maybe.
Yeah, maybe tad less Fremen.
A little bit sort of, I get this dynamic and it will change. But the Harkonnens, man, visually they just look brilliant.
Yeah, maybe less is more though, that's the thing.
Sure, probably. But that's maybe when I want like a whispery Game of Thrones season of people whispering in corridors, and it's the moment when Leia Seydoux has sort of an interesting part to play, and the walking through the corridors. I could have just had more and more and more. They stole the show when they were on screen.
There's much more Charlotte Rampling in this as the Reverend Mother. Really good as sort of speaking behind the veil of...
Veils are creepy. Veil's so creepy.
Real creepy. And what was I going to say?
It's sort of like a cross between religious grandeur in architecture and like engineering technology.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the Vatican and like a Swedish museum. H.R. Geiger had a baby and made a film.
Yeah.
And they just went, is this big enough? No, more, bigger. Like there's that wide in Austin Butler's Gladiator scene when you see all the Harkonnens in the back just going at each other, shaking each other.
Looking like the people from Prometheus.
Yes, Prometheus 2. Lots of Ridley Scott.
Engineers, were they called?
Yeah.
Yeah, the bald ones and that. Yeah. I think in terms of my thing, I would say there's probably... I think I noticed 3 occasions in which I was like, oh, I can see that you've condensed information here.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There was like a bit of a jump, and I'm like, we've moved on. Yeah. Okay, we've moved on, and I'm just going to assume that was all dealt with, and that's fine. I think there's small things like, it's not a spoiler to say that Josh Brolin is in this movie. He's on the poster. He's on the poster. I think his presence in this movie as great as it is explained a little bit too quickly. And I thought, but last time I saw you, your odds didn't look that good. I would have preferred you to explain that a little bit better. But
I think I take away from it, but based on my first point about it earning its right to be so stylish, I sort of half take it away. Is that you have we can talk about this in the spoiler cast later, but we have plot-wise, I'd say it goes on to do what it says it's going to do, and there's not that much that surprised me about it.
No.
It's a minor thing where I'm sort of like, it happens the way it happens and the way I think it said it was going to happen.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, there's a slight...
And it's I don't think the plot led me in suspense.
So where it lacks in perhaps overly massive narrative surprises.
Yes,
the surprise is more visual and tended. I mean, there's one
like I said, but I don't think it's Dune's or Denis Villeneuve's responsibility to reinvent this story. It's adapting a novel from the 1960s before this. I don't think it needs to revolutionize and modernize this type of story, which is technically a hero's journey. So I can fault it for that, but it so clearly graduates from that criticism in my eyes.
I also never thought it felt dated and old. I look at this now as a compendium of two books. Two halves of the same story together. That I can see that sitting on my DVD Blu-ray shelf in the future. Steelbook. I'm thinking,
with a sandworm. Like.
This is probably. I mean, I wasn't that into the Lord of the Rings, but it's kind of that kind of seminal moment where it's like you have the early noughties had the Lord of the Rings, last decade had Game of Thrones, and now we've had Dune. It
represents the best of modern sci-fi and cinema and how to tell a story that frankly is like an old staple story.
Yeah, that's right.
But done in a refreshing way that is very interesting to audiences. I do stand by. If you didn't like part one and you found it too pouty, too posy, and too stylish, and it wasn't enough for you, I do think you probably won't like Dune Part 2. There's a little less exposition if you're worried about that. But the people who to me have said I couldn't get into it or like I just didn't really like it, I don't think people are going to have that much of a different experience in Part 2.
No, I agree. Unless those people go back and watch it with subtitles, maybe. But I agree.
I had a number of friends who said they tried to watch Dune Part 1 2 or 3 times at home, once in cinema, once at home, and they just couldn't connect with it, couldn't get hold of it. Do you also blame that to the fact that people have a smartphone buzzing in their pocket while they're watching things?
Yeah, I do.
I think you have to completely lose yourself in this film. You have to give yourself over for it to really work.
I also think
but I stand by. If you didn't like part one, I'm not going to say part two is going to solve everything for you.
Also, if you know someone who's casually like, oh, I'll go see Dune Part 2. I haven't seen the first one, but I'll see it. Absolutely not. This is a film there's no way you can enjoy this film.
That would be really annoying.
It's really, it's really.
I'd be annoyed to sit with someone who hadn't seen part one. Even if I had, just hear, all I would be able to think about is the things that they don't understand about part one.
Completely. Yeah. There's 2.5 hours of information that they don't have.
Totally, yeah.
But yeah, really impressive stuff, and Hans Zimmer's score as well. Can
you
just say that the song, it's got a time of quiet between the storms. It's called. Yeah. It's like emotive and moving, and really swells.
Who else but Hans?
But anyway, bravo! I don't have that a lot, and I was really, really impressed and blown away. I feel like I've seen it. I've had an experience. I've had a cinematic experience.
Yeah, I look forward to on a sick day, part one, part two, back to back, just taking that in for everything that is. Gorgeous. Denis Villeneuve, there's no doubt he'll go on to do some more. I think he said he wants to do another project, and then he'll come back and do, I think it's Dune Messiah.
But I could wait for because there is a kind of because it is the end of the book. It is a kind of conclusive element that means that I'm happy to wait longer than I would have done between these two films.
Yeah, totally happy for that.
I think
it's like when I saw Batman, I was like, yes, I'll get more, and whenever it's ready.
Whenever
I think they're shooting this year. It's going to release 2025 Batman. Completely irrelevant. Also shot by Greg Fraser. But yes.
Anyway, look, we'll talk about. Oh, I can actually say one more thing. I'll just say that I've never had people. Dune Part 2 is the film that most people have ever come forward to and asked me to see with them.
Really?
I've had so many people say to me, "Oh, you're still doing Part 2? Do you want to go see it again? Do you want to see it?"
Seen it, mate? Yeah.
And I'm like, already seen it. Perk of the job. Anyway, we'll do a spoiler cast. Look out for that. And obviously, when it does come out, see it. Let us know your thoughts at hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. I will just say, due to slight production schedule, we might not be able to read them out. We won't be able to read them out next week, and we'll probably only have a few to read out the following week, actually. But we will get to them.
So if you're listening to this when it comes out, get your email in soon.
Yeah.
If you get your email in straight away when you listen to this, we can get you out. Yeah.
But whenever you're listening to this, even if it's 2 years in the future or 5 years when the next one's out, send us your email anyway. We'll read it out. Anyway, look out for the spoiler cast. That was Dune Part 2. Taking our Dune hats off for a second now, removing the dust and the sand from Arrakis. We're going to now answer some emails.
Spice that, just
the shoe out.
Yeah.
we're going to talk about your emails now. We're going to read some through, which will be talking about some of the recent films that have come out, films we've covered in the past few weeks. First of all, we have an email from
Dan. Dan writes into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, just like you can. And Dan says, hi,
Dan.
lads.
Sorry, that was a partridge thing.
Dan. Hi, lads. Dan from ... Wales here, if you know, episode 110. Friend of the show.
Oh, hi.
I wanted to ask you both if there are any films you've seen that you enjoyed, but you know you'll never watch them again. The reason I ask is that I recently watched Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves, and I loved it. I was ill with the flu whilst watching, and an epic western just hit the spot for me at that time. However, despite how much I enjoyed it and appreciate that it is a good movie, I don't think I'll ever watch it again. I can't place why, but I've actually experienced this with other great films such as The Godfather and Zodiac. Interesting. Most of the time we say we'll never watch certain films again because they were bad. For example, I'd imagine George with Five Nights at Freddy's. But I think it's interesting to hear about good films that people only tend to watch once. Keep up the good work. Dan from impossibly long Welsh town name.
We tried.
We can't. So I'm going to pay. It's an interesting one. There's sort of films that
usually they're if they're too disturbing. So it's like
disturbing,
I don't know if
uncomfortable.
would I watch Hereditary again? The thing is, you and I love films so much, we probably would be open to watching most things, but setting aside bad ones, any things that I've seen that have been so bad, so disturbing.
It's almost like Zone of Interest is something if I never saw again, I could be content with that.
But if I saw it again, I always think that if you see something again, you're always going to get something out of it, though.
Yeah. It's just like a recent
The second
example.
time is the true viewing experience for a movie.
No, I sound like I was like, you say it all the time. I wanted to be like, you said that recently.
I know, but this is what I saw.
Crystallizing.
Yeah. Watch films with subtitles. Yeah, I know. Yeah, fucking 117 episodes.
Yeah, the before trilogy. Blah blah blah.
Okay. I don't think I can think of a film. I
see what you mean by Zodiac.
Blue Valentine. That was a movie I saw and I was like, that's fine. Don't need to watch that again. That was uncomfortable.
When you put Zodiac on there, I get why. I've seen it once. Would love to see it again.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of
it's very dark.
a big rich meal.
It's very long. It's very dark. It's very unpleasant. It's violent.
Speaking of Fincher, like Gone Girl, I've seen once,
No,
and that's a really long film. Oh yeah. Maybe it's such a big.
Would I watch
ask.
The Killer again? Not right now. But then who knows in the future?
No, I'd like to rewatch The Killer. I'd like to rewatch The Killer.
Sorry, Dan. I don't know if we do feel that way.
I'll have a think, but it's a good question. It's a good theory. It's a good concept, Dan. Stay with it. Next email.
Next email is from Benjamin, who says, first time Ela, many time listener. Hello from New York.
They say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Much love from across the Atlantic for you two, your humor, your thoughts, your pod. I've really enjoyed listening to your episodes over the past few months, trying to catch up on older ones while listening to the new stuff.
I like to think Benjamin is tucking into a New York slice with some
He's there.
earpods in.
I can hear the sirens. He's there in the window of a deli, chowing down.
Rain, a little bit Blade Runner. Maybe the rain's powering down. And he's got
steam
some noodles.
the subway.
Yes.
Firstly, I've just finished listening to your
We sound like we've never been to New York.
Yeah. And the camels that walk down the street. It's terrific. Firstly, I've just finished listening to your thoughts on The Zone of Interest. I finally got to seeing it yesterday at the cinema, but after much anticipation
check out our
to see
review if you haven't already.
Yeah, but after much anticipation to see it, I personally was turned off by the film. I completely agree with the discourse on the phenomenal cinematography and the soundtrack as a musician and conductor myself. Oh, cool. However, for my taste, I felt the movie too often was trying, maybe unintentionally, to humanize this horrible person and his family. The scene that especially felt this way was the one shared down on the dock. Are we meant to feel bad for the wife who doesn't want to move? I thought one of the great redeemable characters in the movie was the mother-in-law and the quiet resolution of her character. I respect Jarl's thoughts, but can't say it was an angle and a topic that I cared to watch a film about. Before I move on to the next topic, do you want to just talk about that?
I do disagree, Ben, because I really never got that sense at all. And then obviously we had the privilege of hearing from Jonathan Glazer afterwards. But on your point of some people not getting what they want from this film and not sort of receiving it in the way I think we did, I totally understand it. We have referenced it being a film that feels like a museum exhibition piece as cinema. But for us, that's just a passion thing. Museum exhibition piece as cinema, but for me, that provided a huge impact as an experience I've not had in cinema before. So I massively praise it for that.
Yeah,
we both have friends that have said we've not quite able to connect. With film.
I do think that I don't think even without seeing Jonathan Glazer's Q&A afterwards, I don't ever think that he was trying to humanize those characters. I think
that scene in the dock as well is just clear to revealing who those characters are.
Your discomfort, Benjamin, at having those characters talk about something as mundane and as domestic as
where we're going to be
is kind of the point, because Jonathan Glazer is trying to show the whole film is juxtaposition. It's trying to show how this grotesque domesticity.
And like, I don't want to spoil the film for people who haven't seen it, but the last moments of one of the characters in the film, one of the last scenes in the film, is so purposefully without resolution, without clarity. That's not the role that this character plays. It's here to make a very distinct point. If you've seen the film, you know what that moment is. But totally fair for you to feel that way.
Benjamin's next point is, secondly, I must say I bounce around listening to certain chapters of your pod, as I'm someone who doesn't like to hear reviews or watch trailers before seeing a movie, as I find them to begin to sway my opinion before I've had a chance to make my own first, which I totally agree. I do the same thing. I appearate hearing the buzz, and I'll of course read a snippet for what it's about, but many trailers reveal way too much nowadays, and reviews set up much. It's not a question, it's just a point. Yeah, I agree. Lastly, a question for y'all. I love hearing you both take time to mention the scores for some of these films. Do you have any off-the-beaten-track favourite scores, or ones that the general public may have forgotten? I would throw out as possibilities as Fumio Hayasaka's score to The Seven Samurai, Joe Hisashi's score to My Neighbor Totoro, with songs by Azumi Inu, or even Ryuichi Sakamoto's score for The Revenant. Apologies for the long email and all the ramblings. But thanks to Letterboxd, I've gotten extremely into film and I've watched more movies than the previous 10 probably. Hope to hear from you all. Cheers, Benjamin.
You're very kind.
Off the beaten track scores.
I really like Harry Escott's score for Shame. It's one of my favourite films, but haunting and very, very overly dramatic considering the setting. Not an unknown film, but James Newton, and not an unknown composer, but James Newton Howard's score for The Village is stunning. You can listen to that on its own and it's brilliant. Abel Korasinski's score for Nocturnal Animals, especially at the end, the track Table for Two, I love. And underrated Henry Jackman's score for X-Men First Class. Wow. Not an unknown film, but amazing.
Mine is of the film of interest, is the Zone of Interest. It's Mika Levy. Her score for... I think after I came out of the Zone of Interest, I was like, wow, she really is actually one of the most interesting composers working in film. Her score for Under the Skin, for Jackie, for Monos, I think she even did a little bit, I'm pretty sure it's her that does it for 8th grade. She does the pool party, that's, that strange sound. I'm pretty sure that's Mika Levy. And the work she does in the Zone of Interest is incredible.
So good.
It's like soundscapes, but it works as music. And Mika Levy is, wow, yeah.
This next one is from Thomas, who writes in, says, "Hello guys, hope all is well. Big fan of the podcast. You both have inspired myself and my friend to start our own film podcast together. We just hope we can be good as the both of you sometime.
Not too good. Don't need the competition."
My question is, with the new Dune...
No, good luck. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, good luck. Go for it. My question, with the new Dune film coming out soon, I've wondered if any of you have seen Denis Villeneuve's film Incendies. This is not the first time we've heard people... Incendie, which is not the first time people have written about this. I watched it last weekend and I was truly stunned by the concept of the story. It was devastating and made me realise that Denis is probably the best director working today. If you both have seen it, I wonder if you could maybe review it for the podcast, as not many people have seen / talked about it. Thank you, and keep doing a great job, guys.
We definitely want to do that, and actually we might make a concerted effort to do that, because we had an email last year from someone who wrote in very passionately about why Incendie is such a good film. We'll definitely check
My
that
quick
out.
answer for a lot of people when people are like, who's doing really exciting stuff in cinema right now? I'll go, Denis Villeneuve is one of the most exciting directors working. You should definitely go, and I can recommend so many of his old stuff, his current stuff, and just you have this. I think it's very mainstream appeal to his films. I don't think that makes him lesser as a director.
Emmy writes in about London films. It says, "Hi, George and James. Your bonus episode got me thinking about what films are quintessentially London for me." We touched about this before. If I'm going fairy tale London, I'd have to be the OG, Mary Poppins, with Julie Andrews. A Fish Called Wanda and With Nell and I are very London to me. Interesting about With Nell and I, because that's only set in London in like the first 20% and the last 20%. Interesting. I think are all very London to me. If I'm after Tower Block, slightly more gritty London, 28 Days Later, and a nod to the Ealing classic, The Lady Killers 2. Smoggy London never looked cozier. Love the show. Emmy in Brighton, not London. Yeah, Lady Killers, great film. The original, not the Coen Brothers remake. Thank you, Emmy.
This next one is from Suzanne. He says, "George and James, I'm appalled.
Oh, yeah.
First time emailer here. Love the podcast. Avid weekly listener. But I just spat out my chamomile tea on my cat when I heard that you'd both never seen Twister."
I imagine this cat like...
Question mark, exclamation mark. How old are you both? I'm 34, and I'm sure you were close-ish to my age. It's one of my all-time favorite nostalgic movies, the type that I watch hungover on a Sunday, eating 99p ramen. I've probably seen it 40 plus times.
Wow.
It is the ultimate 90s disaster movie with the most incredibly haunting sound effects that to this day ring in my head whenever I see a storm brewing. Helen Hunt is an absolute babe, wearing no makeup and rocking a tank top for the entire thing. Philip Seymour Hoffman is basically a stoner with the most hilarious, terrible one-liners. I've not seen it. I still quote them with the right people to this day. Obviously, the special effects are awful, but it was 1996, so they are actually amazing. Come on, if you know, you know. And if COW, come on. COW, if you know, you know.
Yeah, it's about, there's a famous CGI cow again.
Oh, cow, if you know, you know. I thought it was like, come on, what's on yeah. And to top it off, you've got Billy P being classic suave Billy P, the icing on the cake. Nothing gets hair out of their face quite like that man. R.I.P. What a legend. Get it watched right now. Pretend it's 1996 when you do. Thank me later. Okay. P.S. Of course the sequel will be terrible. I don't care. I'll still watch it. Anyway, love the podcast. Love both your takes and everything you talk about. Keep up the great work. Love, Suzanne, a Scot living in Verona, Italy.
Nice. Suzanne, yeah, I do want to see it.
First of all, we're 29. We were 2 years old in 1996, so we're sorry.
Yes,
obviously, we have seen films
Yeah.
from before 1994, but
yes, we're 29. Yes, I would like to do. I'd like to see if all the reasons.
Well, we should do Top Gun Maverick. We should watch the original before the new one. We'll do a little bonus on it.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
I will say that obviously Philip Seymour Hoffman, great, one of the greatest actors of all time.
So good.
Greatly missed. And I actually love Bill Paxton. I really do miss him as well.
Yeah, he's really good.
And Helen Hunt is also
You know what Bill was one of my favourite Bill Paxton roles is in True Lies. He's so funny. You should watch True Lies. I'm pretty sure it's still good. If someone could write in and if they've seen True Lies recently and could confirm that that film's as good as I think it is.
I might watch it
It's
soon.
like P. Carl Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Bill Paxton in a really funny role.
He's good in Edge of Tomorrow, Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
He's like,
good in Edge of Tomorrow.
You know, when Tom Cruise is like, Sergeant, he's like, you're an American, right? He's like, no, I'm from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Anyway, Adam writes in, friend of the show, Adam writes in and says, Madam Web is the film of 2024. Last week, we didn't review Madam Web, but a good friend of the show, Henry Calvert, reviewed it for us.
A review lies there for you.
Yes, if you need it. Adam says, hi, James and George and James. I normally write in about great films I've seen. This week, though, I took a knock. I decided to go to an 8:40 p.m. screening of Madam Web. Surely it couldn't be that bad. Lads, it wasn't total trash, just mostly. Adam Scott was fun. The second act began to be quite creative. However, the first act was incredibly jarring, and the third act was tackled in about 3 minutes flat. Watching the trailers beforehand could be likened to the wait before an injection. Walking through a cobweb would have been more stimulating. I left the cinema with a stone in my shoe, and that was a more pleasant experience. I like that. You've got like 3 one-liners there, Adam, and you've got, I'm going to give you all 3. Yeah. You've got like the injection anecdote, the stimulant one. Great, I love it. I really don't like hating on movies, but there's hundreds of people involved, and yet this one, when there's hundreds of people involved, yet this one simply was misguided and misjudged by Sony. Hope you two and the other sirens are doing well. For a Adam Web. No, just Adam.
You know what Madam Web needs for me to engage with it? It needs, which doesn't happen anymore, it needs to just be on TV. And I'll be like, oh God, Madam Web. And I'll fold my arms and like, I'll stumble across it. Maybe it's only just started 5 minutes in. And I'll sort of watch it in that totally non-critical. That's what Madam Web needs for me. And I unfortunately don't really like flick through films. But that's the only way I think I'd engage with it.
I think we had emails about this, but that is something we've lost just when you stumble across a film.
Yeah.
Especially when they're easily accessible.
And it's films you'd always go and watch.
This has been on for 10 minutes on Channel 4. I think I'll wait.
Amazing. Yeah,
I'll watch this.
Yeah. You call your sibling, like, oh, look what's on. Yeah, to me, like, if National Treasure was on, that was it. That was my night.
Okay, I'm going to have to go and see this film because you talk about... I wouldn't be surprised if you had...
I love National Treasure.
Like a National Treasure tattoo on your bum or something. Sorry. But it'd be funny. Yeah. Anyway.
Last one is from Declan, who writes into the show. I know.
Yes.
Oh, with more, Madam Web. And he says, Dearest Sirens, and of course, James and George, let's talk Madam Web. Controversially, I liked it.
Whoa.
Yes, let's get straight to the point. I think I quite like the fact that it feels like an early 2000s Marvel film. There's something nostalgic and simple about it, probably too simple, and yet they do still struggle to make the film make sense. Can I just say, I've seen clips from the final action scene. Bear in mind, I've not seen this film. And it is set, the action scene is set on the Pepsi Cola sign. You know, in New York, on the Hudson or the side of one of the, I don't know where it is, but like the Pepsi Cola sign that looks out to the water. The final action scene, again, I've not seen the film, is set around the Pepsi Cola sign. Isn't that just shameless?
Cynical, shameless.
The most, like, I've seen some shameless product placement, like the Transformers Coors Light or Bud Light, whatever it is. But like that is just
the movie Air.
The movie Air is just so soulless as an exercise to be like, where are we going to set our... Imagine getting that cool as a writer. You need to rewrite this to revolve around the Pepsi Cola sign.
Hi. The guys from Pepsi have had a phone.
They're paid for Dakota Johnson's salary.
Why is Robert Downey Jr. working at Pepsi? They're paying for...
Well, we're actually got a call from Pepsi, Mr. Nolan here. Sir, scrap that idea. Okay, go back to it. Anyway. Celeste O'Connor, but we'll go back on Declan's words. Celeste O'Connor was absolutely hilarious in a good way, and I found Dakota Johnson was quite funny, even though sometimes that didn't always make sense for her character. The villain is terrible, with every scene of his feeling generic and the same. I think you didn't need 3 Spider Women. 1 would have been enough. You do only get flash forwards of them in their costumes, and they never get their powers, which is a huge mistake from the film. Sorry if this is minor spoilers, people, as I would have loved to have not been baited into thinking I'd see some Spider Women in action for more than 30 seconds each. Visually, I quite liked what they were going for, with an interesting web-like vision of Madden Web seeing the Spider-Verse, or what I think could have been just a reference to it. I do like these characters, but I'm excited that potentially some of these actors could be brought back for a much better movie. But because their potential is there, just not capitalized on in this film. Don't get me wrong, in all caps, it's a bad film. But I like to be able to see where the potential was to tell a good story and focus on what works, which is Celeste O'Connor, the times we do see superpowers in action from the Spider-Women, and the character of Madam Web and her powers are struggling on because a much better film, they could be something special like they are in a 90s cartoon. The film is bad, but there are things to appreciate. It's definitely better than Morbius, and dare I say, I loved it more than the Venom films too. Not saying much, I know, but still. There was a good film in here somewhere, but if you're willing, give it a chance by going in and having expectations that are the lowest of the low, and maybe you'll find aspects you liked or could appreciate too. As always, much love to you both. You're gorgeous being making this planet a beautiful place to be. All the best, Declan.
Declan, thank you for your very diplomatic and even-handed and fair approach to a film
nice
that
to
has
hear
otherwise been savaged by critics. But I do hear in my right ear Henry screaming.
Yeah. It was the worst film I've seen.
And I've seen many bad superhero movies.
Henry, we love you. I almost like, Declan, I'm happy you got something enjoyable from it, but I'm almost like, is that the bar for... I'm not convinced even by your words that constitutes also something that's worth watching.
A mass multi-million-dollar budget movie made by Sony. Sony made by Sony at Sony.
Yeah.
Is why does that deserve such a what's what I'm looking for?
An olive branch.
An olive branch. Why does that deserve such an easy, not an easy ride, or like benefit of a doubt?
Yeah.
You know, smaller films don't get this benefit of doubt. Films with lesser budgets, fewer money, fewer stars behind it, you know, they don't get that chance. So why be so kind to Madam Web, even though I really appreciate how diplomatic.
Same with the comic book films. It's like, you've done 35 of these. Yeah. You know how to make these films. We've seen you make them good. Yeah. How can you... I know that Sonyverse is different from others, but like in general, we're like, how are you still writing the superhero films like this, if not as a cynical exercise to extract money from an audience for 2 hours?
Yeah. Sorry, it's not a student film.
No. Well, guys, there you go. Those were the emails we had today. We still have plenty more to get through. Please send in your thoughts, as always, to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. We will continue to read out your reviews, your questions, your concerns on the show. But let us move on to the games.
Yes, let's finish with some games.
Okay, George. As always, Pop Kitchen ends
with a game.
Today, we're redoing the game you gave me last week. Sure. You love Cast List Countdown.
Yes.
This is the fast, quick-fire version of that game. You have to guess the film from its cast, but I'm only going to give you 3 of the cast members of the film, more prominent, supporting and leading. And you have to quick-fire tell me, with only 3 cast members, which film I'm talking about.
Okay.
Please play along at home if you can. George, are you ready? Name the film from these 3 actors. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Christopher Walken, Sean William Scott, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Welcome to the Jungle.
Yes. John Cusack, Zac Efron, Matthew McConaughey.
The Butler.
No.
The Paperboy.
Yes. Guy Pearce, Danny McBride, Catherine Waterston.
Guy Pearce, Catherine Waterston. Alien Covenant.
Yes,
Wow.
just got it. Forrest Whitaker, Kristen Stewart, Jodie Foster.
Flight Plan. Panic Room.
Yes. Bryan Cranston, Julia Roberts, Tom Hanks.
Julia Roberts. Larry Crow?
Yes, yes.
I think that's the only film they've been in together.
That's round one. There's a real.
Getty.
Those are just on the edge of getting you there, and you were sort of in the director for a lot of them.
My Mind Palace.
Flight Plan is a good association
Yes.
to Panic Room.
The standalone Jodie Foster thrillers.
What's in? Yes,
Jodie Foster's on a plane
I've
with
seen
her daughter.
Flight Plan, and she goes missing.
The daughter
Yes.
goes missing on the plane, and the bad guy is Peter Sarsgaard.
Oh, spoilers.
No, he's the. Oh, is that a spoiler?
Maybe.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, he's the threatening
He's
presence in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it.
Is it post 9/11 film?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it came out in 2005. I want to say. Jodie Foster, and she's good. She is good in everything.
Jodie Foster is good in everything.
I'm learning that.
Okay. Are you ready for your next round?
Hit me.
Very well. I tickled you there. I tickled you.
Oh, well, it was fun.
Do you like the Alien Covenant one?
Yeah.
Because Guy Pearce really throws you, but he is in that.
Is, at the beginning, is he? Or
Yeah.
is it some the Wayland?
That's Prometheus. He might be. I think he's in a different bit in Alien Covenant.
He's in. Yeah.
He's like this old rich guy.
Is he? No, hang on a minute. I don't think he is in an Alien Covenant.
I think he is in Alien Covenant.
Yes, he's at the beginning. Yes, he's at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Ready? Next round. How'd you get on at home? Name this film from just 3 actors. Ready? Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Ewan Griffith.
It's the Fantastic Four. First
OG Fantastic Four. Leslie Mann, Ewan McGregor, Jim Carrey.
I Love You, Philip Morris.
Yes. Eva Mendes, Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell.
The other guys.
Yes. Bradley Cooper, Miles Teller, Jonah Hill.
War Dogs.
Yes. John Malkovich, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand.
Burn After Reading.
Yes. John Malkovich, Kurt Russell, Mark Wahlberg.
Kurt Russell, Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell.
Yeah. You've seen this film, you like this film.
Kurt Russell. New Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell.
John Malkovich, Kurt Russell.
Oh, Deepwater Horizon.
Yes.
Yes, I forgot John Malkovich
Yes.
was in it. It was a
You
terrible
totally
accent.
forget John
Yeah.
Malkovich in that. A good John Malkovich in that Deepwater Horizon
Yes,
film.
but doing a dodgy accent. He's
Yeah.
meant to be doing Cajun or something. He kind of
Keep
goes
digging for
all
the-
around. The oil is not coming
and
up
I want it dug.
for the thing.
I don't know if that's what he says.
But it's,
I'm just
I want it dug.
I want you to
Drilled.
keep digging.
Why is there no oil on my platform?
He doesn't get made fun of nearly enough for being Pascal
It's 'cause
Savage and Johnny English.
Oh,
Like that, he just totally gets away with that. But
I assume it's because back in America, no one watched that movie. So no one
yes,
could be like,
no
John
one knew.
Malkovich.
John Malkovich, yeah,
I think also it's hard to tease John
Oopsie.
Malkovich because he would just sort of, he can stare you down.
yeah. You
can't
can't
do
tease
it.
him. He'd just be resilient to it.
Welcome on the show anytime, John.
I love John Malkovich. Well, there you go, guys. Those are the
Wow,
games.
yeah.
Some good tickles in there,
I-
and a
I
clean
was
bill of
clean
health
one.
from
Thank
you.
you, yeah.
Whew, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of PULP Kitchen. If you've just joined us for the first time, please go and check out our other film reviews. We review films every week, but thank you. We post new episodes of this show every single Wednesday.
And we also post bonus episodes that comes out later in the week. As we've mentioned, this week's bonus will be a spoiler discussion about
We've already
Dune Part
recorded
2.
it. It's good. Go and check out our other
Absolutely.
little praises and mini gripes
And-
with specific things to do with the plot, but save it until you've seen the film.
And many of you follow us on social media and discovered our show that way, but please continue to do so. We're on Instagram and TikTok. We post many things. We post content that we do not film on this show. We post our film bites, our interviews with other film creators and film people in the industry about their film choices. They're great fun. Do keep following us. And as ever, guys, please like, subscribe, share, tell people about it. Be like, wow, Dune Part 2. Do you know what I really enjoyed about Dune Part 2? It was the PULP Kitchen review. You can check that out on
Part
this
of
link.
culture, really, aren't we?
We're just enmeshed.
Rate us on your app that you listen. If
Absolutely.
you're listening to us, rate us. If you're watching us, like us.
And
it
if you
just
are,
helps us grow.
as we said before, someone in a position of power to make
Yes.
things happen.
To force people to watch our content,
You know,
that's always good. A classroom, a lecture hall.
Do it.
If you're the headmaster at a school, required
Yes.
reading.
Yeah.
Maybe
If you're one of the interstitial announcers on the BBC, you can just plug our show in.
This is
It's
the BBC. We need to. Oh yeah. If you
Yeah.
do the things,
Yeah.
just wire us in.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Kensington 365.
Loads of shows are coming off the air now. They got nothing to put on TV. There's no money.
Hey.
Put us on. Hey.
Anyway, have a great week, guys.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.